We got a guest speaker tonight. Will is joining us. He has been long involved with Hack Upstate and was involved pretty early on in Careers in Code as an intern and has some great experience to share with you guys. So I'm going to turn off my video before I make anyone sick and hand it off to Will.
Thanks, Max. Good luck with that. Good evening, guys, and good to see all of you. It's pretty surreal to be here. As Max said, I was probably, I think, the third hire at Hack Upstate when it was just Jesse and Doug, and I helped with the first cohort. It's really been awesome to be here. Yeah, look forward to chatting with you guys tonight. This will be quick. If you guys want to turn your cameras on, that's always helpful and great to see. This is definitely more of like a discussion-based talk, so I probably going to spend 10-15 minutes kind of yapping at you, and then I'd love to see if you guys have any questions. So please feel free to like put cameras on, raise hands, interrupt me if you have any questions. But yeah, let's get started. So let me see if I can. Oh yeah, that's what I want. Okay. Can you all see that? And if I switch, that works too?
You're good.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this talk is called The Power of Storytelling and Other Lessons. It was kind of struggled with the title, but it's inspired by Eric Hirschberg. He is an advisor at the company I work for, which I'll talk about in a little bit. He's a founder of a tiny little company called Activision, which is the parent company for Activision Blizzard. They make, some of the most successful video games in the world. And so he is just an incredible storyteller, incredible artist, and just wanted to make sure that I kind of attribute this properly to him. But yeah, let's get started. So I've been watching Ozark a lot, and I don't know if anyone else has seen the show, but they always start off these symbols kind of like foreshadowing what might happen there in the rest of the episode. So I'm going to try to kind of like attempt to do that right now because I think it's neat and also just kind of funny. So we're going to talk about treasure chests. This is the SpongeBob treasure chest, if anyone recognizes that. This thing, and if anyone remembers or recognizes what this is, then kudos to you. You'll be pleasantly surprised later in the talk. And then also this thing, start your stuff. And I'll talk about why that's important and I think how it applies to all of you. So yeah, but before we start, a little bit more about me. I live in Vermont. That's where I am right now. I was born and raised in Syracuse, though, and as Max said, I was involved in Hack Upstate when I was younger. Yeah, I spent a lot of my time in Vermont now. I go to school up here. I go to school at the University of Vermont, and I'm studying mathematics with a minor in public communication. So a lot of really interesting things going on that I don't really know how they all overlap, but it's been fun. I do some research in a lab we have here called the Complex Systems Center, which does a lot of graduate and postdoc research in machine learning and AI, namely with computational social science. So looking at how we can apply all of the computer science learnings that I'm sure you guys are talking about here in Careers in Code and using them to inform the natural world. So things like, if you send a tweet, like how does that dictate how someone's overall sentiment about a subject is actually informed? So pretty cool stuff. And then I also work at this company called Beta Technologies, which is an aerospace developer. We're building electric planes that look like this. It's pretty sweet. These things can take off vertically and then fly horizontally like a regular aircraft. Enables more rural access for cargo, medical applications, moving organs from city to city. It's been a really awesome journey, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we are hiring. So I want to chat about that at the end of the talk as well. And like Max said, I worked at Hack Upstate. I think this photo is from Hack Upstate 2013, maybe, or Hack Upstate 13 rather. And yeah, it's been an awesome run. That's Jesse and Doug and myself hanging out outside the tech garden. And I really just do want to applaud all of you for kind of moving through this process virtually. I was part of the first cohort, which was all in person, and that was a difficult program no matter what, and to do it online I think is a really special thing. So so kudos to all of you, and I'm really excited to kind of see where you guys have been. I've been watching and it's been great. So yeah, so the kind of crux of my talk centers around the central question, which is like, why should people care about what you're doing, right? You guys are all going to be going out into the world soon as full stack developers. You're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff. You already are. Heard some talk about some weather APIs and stuff. That's awesome. That's just kind of happening in the background. You need to eventually kind of showcase this to the world in order to move your career forward and move your goals forward. And so that's why I think this question is important. Does anyone have any kind of thoughts about like what the answer should be? Like why should people actually care about what you're doing? Anything on the table here?
I guess if it doesn't affect them, then they probably shouldn't care. But if you can create something that enhances people's lives or makes things easier, then they definitely should care.
Totally, right? So making things that drive impact or have real value, absolutely. It's very close to answer I'm going to dive into in a little bit. Anyone else? Cool. All right. So.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to being a part of a program like this in a city such as Syracuse, which has been designated as having a wide technology gap, having very many low income families, especially. It's important for a program like this to be here and for people to see it be successful, so more individuals can possibly get the skills or these, come into a program for free to obtain these skills with teachers and instructors and people who can assist to truly change their lives.
Absolutely. So yeah, you hit it on the head, right? Like the other piece of this is like you all are adding so much value to the space, by going through this program and doing this really hard thing. And that in and of itself is awesome. And you're paving the way for future folks to do the same. That's totally it. And to kind of like, interestingly enough, combine those two answers, I'm going to kind of tell a story, and hence the title of this talk. And when I was making this, I struggled to kind of figure out what I wanted to say. I actually worked backwards. I started with the end of the presentation, then kind of worked my slides up. So this is not a story about myself. It's a story about kind of anime, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know if anyone else is familiar with this, kind of like a soft anime that was premiered earlier, like I would say 5 to 10 years ago. I love the show. It's awesome. But that aside, I think it has a lot of interesting learnings for kids, but also for adults. And so I'm going to focus on one in this talk. And that is of this character, Zuko. And he's one of the main canon characters. And he's the son of this like sort of overarching warlord that they call a fire lord who controls one of the nations. He's part of the royal family. He's a prince, etc. However, in the beginning of the show, he speaks out in like a war council meeting where he supposedly shouldn't have. His father gets angry, and he banishes him after a failed duel. And he tasks him only to return when he's found the Avatar, which is like the central kind of protagonist of the show, someone who only has the power to defeat his father. So that's kind of how this arc starts. And for years, he traverses the world trying to find this guy, often flouting his power, going around into towns and just kind of like having these like showy displays of his anger, basically. And when in reality, he was often a laughing stock of the show, kind of like this uncoordinated guy, often made a fool of himself, et cetera, et cetera. However, in the end, he ends up realizing where he went wrong, teams up with the person he swore to defeat, which is on the right in this photo, and ends up like kind of reclaiming the world and rebuilding it after defeating his father. And at the end of the show, he asks who will lead the new Fire Nation, the one who he, his father originally kind of like ruled over. Now that his father is gone, and his uncle rather candidly responds that Zuko himself should lead it, surprising him. And in the end, he does become the leader, and it's like this big dramatic cinematic moment. That's not really the point. The point is that, back to our central question, which is that why should people actually care about what you're doing? And let's revisit this under the context of Zuko's sort of predicament. In his mind, he was forced to go throughout this whole process and reclaim his honor and ascend to the throne, whatever. But no one really seemed to take him seriously, and he was often the laughingstock of members of his other family, like I said. However, it really wasn't until he realized, rather, that he could use this power for good, that he stopped worrying about what other people actually thought about him and just kind of put his head down and did what was right. And in the end, like weirdly enough, he was rewarded for that. And he was rewarded specifically for doing it the right way. So kind of moving this conversation along, I would encourage you to make this shift. And I think Zuko did the same of, for why should people care about what you're doing to why will people care about what you're doing? And they are very different questions, and I'm going to explain why. So in Zuko's case, really, no one cared what he was doing or who he was. He was just his father's son. It didn't matter until he actually started to realize that he could use all of this stuff for good. He received the right attention, and then inherently at the end of the show, the right reward. So this shift from should to will, I think, embodies the same experience that he went through, and one that I would encourage you all to think about as well, which is that, when you strip away all the cinematics and all the stuff about why is this guy telling me about some like weird show I probably never heard of, it's really important to think about, because it just hammers home the point that you can use storytelling to promote the work that you will do, or better yet have done, rather than as a mask for the work that you think you should do, maybe the work that other people think you should do, or maybe the work that you would like hopes, lofty goals that were unrealistic, etc. This word should implies that you have to be invested in convincing people that whatever you're doing is worthy of their attention, when in reality it probably isn't. And it usually materializes into trying to convince people that they should care about something when it doesn't actually matter. However, why will people care about what I'm doing, which implies the fact that whatever you're doing or building is actually worthy of their attention, and naturally people will be interested in what you're creating rather, because it's cool. And like one of you said in the beginning, it applies value, or that it changes people's lives, or that it affects them. And that's really important. So the kind of lesson learned here is that you just kind of have to do the things. The important part of your journey as you go throughout this program, and I think the rest of at least the beginning of your careers here, is to keep your head on straight, really dedicate yourself to doing this good work. When you have real tangible things to show for the time you've spent here, people will pay attention. And I'm sure that this is something that like the instructors and TAs have already kind of told you, which is like the power of the portfolio, right? And I think it's just even more important as you think about, outside of like just your coding projects, what else can you contribute to making sure that you are, the best professional self that you could be? Don't overpromise. Don't say something that you didn't do, but you would hope to do. Don't lie. That's kind of like the general theme of this, but also just be the real authentic you, and show that you have all this stuff to kind of prove yourself, because you have proved yourself even by just being in this room. And I'm sure that this kind of folds into something that you might be thinking about, which is imposter syndrome. And I don't know if Jesse's on here, but I know he used to talk about this a lot when I was working at Hack Upstate. And my God, I certainly would not be here if I didn't suffer from a bad case of this. Do you guys know what imposter syndrome is? Has that been explained at least a little bit?
We've been explaining and we felt it.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. So you know, a lot of you maybe have firsthand experience what this feels like. So I like to kind of flip this on its head a little bit. Maybe it's very, motivational speakery of me, but I think the real thing about imposter syndrome is that it's solvable with one simple truth. And this goes back to the fact that most people with imposter syndrome, don't realize that they actually have the credentials to be where they are, right? So goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is the fact that if you do real high quality work, you've already proven yourself, in whatever role you happen to stumble into. There's a reason you're there. And as I've said before, there's a reason that you're here at Careers and Code. You've all been selected because of your drive and passion and willingness to contribute to this program. And you have to remember that. And sometimes it's hard. Trust me, sometimes it's hard, right? We've all been there and been in that situation. But just something to kind of think about as we think about like, how can my, little action steps each day. So if I do real work each day, I know that is the foundation for, kind of solving this imposter syndrome. But the catch of all of this is that this program isn't, this plan or whatever of sitting down and doing the work 100% of the time and just expecting people to come to you isn't foolproof, right? People actually have to know about you. And this is where storytelling comes in. And I think this is arguably the hardest part of this whole thing. Eric, the, individual who I spoke at the beginning of the talk, he has this really great quote that largely like shifted my perspective about my career. And I will repeat it for you, which is that there's a difference between putting your head down and doing the work and people knowing that you're putting your head down and doing the work. And I think that's a really, really great way to think about this. And it embodies the fact that you need to be able to strategically tell your story about whatever you're building, whatever you're doing, whoever you are as a person, by emphasizing your work at the right time. And again, kind of letting that speak for itself. In an interview, bring everything that you've ever worked on. Not sure how to impress a recruiter or somebody that you're maybe trying to court into a job interview, show your portfolio, right? It should be as simple as that. This stuff matters. And I really just do want to emphasize that it will get you far. I got my my kind of first job in college by cold emailing someone and sending them a few examples of work that I had done. And they were like, yeah, you're hired. And that's really like, I got lucky with the right place in the right time. The fact that somebody had just quit, like all those other factors that just kind of go into the craziness that is job selection. But like, I really do attest the fact that I had those things to just pull out of the hat immediately. They probably wouldn't have responded to my email if they hadn't seen that like I had things to show for myself, right? And so kind of with that in mind, I'll leave you with these 4 wisdoms, which is 1, communicate relentlessly. So be open about how you do work and invite collaboration with others, because you also need to be transparent, like knowing that creating in a vacuum never works. You can only create this real tangible stuff that's you're going to be your basis when you invite perspective from other people and work with others, while also keeping things in the open. And that invites scrutiny, which is sometimes tough, also invites praise, but that scrutiny drives you towards a better product, a better thing, or being a better person, of course. Let the goods do the talking. So like I said, your work is your treasure chest, hence the first image. Strut your stuff, right? Like you have all been able to create these things, or you will create these things. Do that and then kind of be ready to broadcast it. And that goes into the last point, which is that talk only when you have something to say, right? Don't feel as like you always need to be the loudest one in the room. You have the right material, you have the right stuff to kind of show how badass you are and let that do the talking. I think that like one of the things we talked a lot about during the first cohort was like, I go into a job interview or a room full of people, and I feel like it's hard to talk with folks because I don't know how to communicate with them or be that like super personable professional person. And that's important, of course, but talk about your work, talk about what makes you passionate, and I think that really kind of like drives forward the question. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I do want to kind of touch back quickly on the company before I jump into questions, and then we can kind of kick off that, because I would love to kind of hear what you guys are thinking. But so I work for this company, Beta Technologies. We're based in Vermont, although a lot of our positions are remote. So I know that you guys have that requirement to be in the area. So you are able to do that by working for a remote company, of course. I believe that's still the case. But yeah, we are hiring across all teams for software positions. A lot of this is more integrated work. So things like, working on aircraft software or working on kind of more low-level programming languages. But like I said, you all have the skills to be able to build up to something like this, and I think it'd be really cool. So if you have any questions, I will leave my contact information at the end of the talk. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? I can stop sharing here and open up the floor. Anyone would like to say anything?
Will would be a particularly good person's brain to pick about interviewing. As someone who has sat in on several interviews on both sides of the job table, kind of taking all of this experience, letting that presentation soak in, and then just throwing out any thoughts that you have at Will would be a good resource to use for that.
Totally, happily.
I was going to ask kind of about the interview process. So when people interview for your company, do they have to do whiteboard interviews, or
Sure.
what do they have to do?
That's a good question. And I think it really goes back to the values that I tried to kind of present in this presentation. I know that what you're talking about, those whiteboard interviews, really deep technical interviews are still prevalent in a lot of companies. We've really tried to strip that away and focus on 3 things, which is, what are you actually passionate about? What do you care about? For us, we're an aerospace company and we're building sustainable technology. So for us, that means a passion in sustainability, aviation, or technology. We're looking for those 3 things. For a different company, it might mean something else, right? If you're doing something in healthcare, focusing on like what actually makes people, have a livable life, right? All those things, whatever that might be. So for us, our interview process is actually like pretty fluid, I would say. It really depends on the position. If we're hiring for a more technical position, we might spend more time speaking with an engineer or that sort of thing. But always coming back to those values. And I think like as a candidate going into any interview screening process, if you know what you're passionate about and you're able to communicate that, like that will come through, or it should come through rather. And I would hope that the people who are interviewing you would be able to recognize that. And if they don't, then maybe that company isn't the best place for you, right? Because you want to be able to work for someone who recognizes your passions, then is able to provide supports for you to kind of flourish under those conditions. Does that answer your question?
Oh, I thought I was speaking. I was muted. I said, yes, thank you. That makes sense.
Great. Yeah.
One thing that I've always found in interviews is that you've got to be a good storyteller, right? Like that's what it ends up coming down to is when you ask a candidate a question, sometimes you know, oh, can you tell me about a time? And they're like, yes, I can. Like, are you kidding me? Like, can you elaborate a little bit more? But then you also get people on the other side of the spectrum a lot too, right? Where they're like so passionate about it that they don't catch themselves and they ramble for 20 minutes. And then you go, oh, I don't know if I'm going to want to work with this person. So I know that that's one thing that, you know, I find is really important to hit that sweet spot of show your passion, but also make sure that you're being articulate and concise in your answers. I know that's one thing that's super important to me. And then the other part of it is like storytellers are fun to work with, right? Like when someone when an engineer can capture the rest of the company and explain why the bug happened and how they fixed it without losing everyone involved and actually getting people to understand it, now you not only told a good story and got everyone engaged, but now the whole rest of the non-technical team understands it a little bit more. So next time a bug like this happens, right, they're able to capture that. So even something as trivial as, oh, I missed that semicolon, or, oh, I didn't uppercase that one letter, being able to share that and make the story out of that, I think is very important, not only in the interview process, but also keeping coworkers engaged, right? And keeping that line of communication clear.
Totally. I would second that. And I would also say that like this myth that you can't do both is like definitely a myth, right? Like each of you has a potential to both be an amazing communicator and storyteller and also a tech wizard, right? You know, like it's incredibly valuable to be able to communicate the work that you're doing. And I think that is arguably one of the most important job skills to have in today's market.
Yeah, I would actually argue that both communication and the desire to constantly be learning are more important to me than the programming experience that you've had.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you are willing to learn and can show me a project where you learned and then talk about that project and communicate through it, that is way more important to me than, oh, you just went through a boot camp or college and learned this particular language. Because I've got news for you. 10 years from now, we're probably not going to be using React, which we're diving into today, right? We're probably not going to be using JavaScript, or if we are, it's going to be a totally different version and it's not going to be the JavaScript that we know today, right? So that constant desire to learn, in addition to being able to talk about it and communicate through it, is just so important.
Agreed. Yeah, well said. Any other questions I can answer?
I was going to ask a question, but I think you actually answered it on the tail end of when you were speaking to Leary. I always talk about my kids, and they are a big part of my why. They are a big part of my story. I include them in everything. I even had a snippet about them on my portfolio site. And recently I came across an interview, or I think people were just speaking about a gentleman who was in a position of interviewing a lot of people. And he mentioned how when he came across a woman or a mother or something like that, he was less likely to give them a job or to hire them because they were mothers or what have you. So, you know, I'm unapologetically a mom, you know, but that did cause me to, you know, say, oh, wait a minute, you know, do I hold back my story to get my foot in the door, or, you know, to get this experience? But when you were speaking to Leary, you mentioned, you know, something about, you know, you want to see, is this the type of company you want to work for? Do they have the, you know, so what it means for me is if the company doesn't have that type of culture, that work-life balance, where they don't understand about families, or if they don't value those things, then that probably isn't the company for me anyway. So I should probably continue to go as I should, because that's me being my true self and my strongest self. And I just wanted to say thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. Like, totally agree with what you said. You know, the interview process is meant to be bi-directional, or I would hope that it many companies it is. You know, if someone is shunning you because they believe that your position as a mother, you know, is going to reduce your time to be able to, you know, dedicate that otherwise to work, you know, you said it, right? Like you should probably look elsewhere. And I think that's really important to consider too, in this kind of idea of like knowing this like virtue of self-confidence is that, you know, when you go in the interview process, like you have stake, right? Like you're just not being grilled by a committee. Like you're like, hey, like, you know, I'm trying to figure out if this is also a good fit for me. And I would hope that that would help inform some of the ways you ask questions. And that's why they always say, you know, like make sure you ask questions at the end of an interview. Like make sure you show that you're actually like invested in figuring out if like this company's meant for you. And like, yeah, like whatever, but it's true, you know, like I think you said it really well. And I would hope too that in that case, it would be very apparent one, when a company like that is probably not meant for you, but two, when one is, right? Because if you stick with that story, you stay true to yourself, you know, you talk about how important your children are to you, and maybe someone else on the call is, you know, also a mother and is able to relate to that or emphasize how much they really care about that and value your time. And maybe they have programs that support you, all those sorts of things that I think would maybe not otherwise come out of a conversation unless you did include it. So in my eyes, so many more benefits than drawbacks, but really well recognized. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Today we had a member join our team who was more junior, and even though the position we were hiring for was senior, we recognized that she would be a better team and culture fit, and that it was more beneficial for us to have someone who could engage in the team and communicate and be passionate about the work, more so important than their technical experience and years under their belt, right? And so oftentimes that's what you're trying to get across in your interview, because you are going up against other entry-level candidates who are boot camp grads or are college grads, right? And so that's your differentiator. That's how you stand out, by showing your passion, and that's what gets you the job.
Totally.
Scotty, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's cool. I was just adding on to what Will was saying, and adding on to what Shantina was saying, just for everybody in general. When I interview for companies, I want us to go in there knowing that, yes, we are trying to interview to get into a company. We worked so hard, but then at the same time, having the confidence in yourself that you're not desperate. You have to have that confidence in what we learned. We learned a skill where you know what we're talking about, we know what we're doing, and that not only we're looking for a position, it has to be the best fit for us, and whatever is meant for us will never miss us, and whatever misses us was never meant for us. Meaning I had took multiple positions just because like I just felt like at that moment I needed to have a job, realizing like, okay, I didn't really do my research on a company and I hated the job that I was in, end up leaving the job because I didn't do my own research. But then actually like doing research on a company and making sure that their core values align with my core values, and absolutely loving where I was at. I think all of those things are seriously important. There's so many different resources on how you can really get company reviews and because I mean, of course, everybody puts their best face forward on their websites, but there are so many different ways to dig deep on a company, and you really want to do your research before you just go out applying for places just because you're desperate to get into like the field. It's so many tech companies, and the fact that you made a good point. Thank you so much. You answered a question by saying that that we can work remote and still live in the area, because that was a question that I had as well too. So thank you for answering that in your conversation. With that, there's multiple tech companies around the world that we can work for. Just do your research and make sure that it's aligning with you. Where a lot of us are moms, and with COVID coming into play, a lot more companies are flexible with us being moms, and they're offering more things for that work-life balance. That was my biggest thing with wanting to get into tech, is because I realized that the tech field definitely is heavy on work-life balance. So go for what you want and don't settle for less, honestly.
Well said. Thank you. Yeah. That's great.
Any other questions for Will?
Okay.
Will, one final question for you. How have you seen careers in code evolve over all 3 cohorts?
I was
Oh,
just about
boy.
to ask him that.
That's a crazy question. You know, when Jesse and Doug hired me, our Google Drive was basically empty. You know, a lot of the documentation and processes and ideas and brainstorms and programs and forums and things didn't exist. So to see that go from that to then launching our first cohort, I was like, holy crap, like this is nuts. I remember being there at the kickoff ceremony, you know, Max, you were there, a lot of other great community, friends were there as well. And that was a really like kind of watershed moment for me. And I think the rest of the team, we realized like, oh yeah, we can do this. And then seeing the graduation ceremony was obviously the culmination of that. Now, like seeing that progress through multiple more cohorts is like, you know, like brain explosion, because it really just is incredible. I think, you know, when we look at outcomes, it's just incredible to see all the amazing work that you folks have done and will do and will continue to do post-graduation, and just the impact that makes in the community is incredible. And, you know, I've seen that both in the growth of the students and the curriculum and the way that you teach and just all those little nuances and lessons that I can see you all have learned so well. So, you know, please give yourselves a round of applause for being here today and being in that moment. And I think that's awesome. So congratulations. Now you have a lot more time to go. That's exciting. You know, it's a hump. You know, the CEO of our company talks a lot about mountains, right? Like we're going up the mountain together, and you're gonna get to the top. And at the top, there's a lot of good things waiting for you. But also, you know, like if you like climbing up mountains, that's why you're here. So yeah, enjoy that for sure. And thank you for having me tonight. It's always a pleasure to come back here and talk with you all. I'm gonna leave my email in the chat if you are ever open to having a conversation. I, you know, owe like my career to Jesse and Doug for being open to having a 30-minute conversation with me just to discuss life. And so I would encourage you to do that with anyone you meet. And also always here to talk, you know, interviews or whatever I can be of help for. I'm always around. But yeah, thank you all again for having me and good luck with the rest of the program.
Thanks, Will.
Much.
There was a logo and you
Thank
said,
you.
tell us about it later.
The jobs, yes. Was that what you were asking? Sorry.
The Avatar Airbender logo.
Oh, the logo, yeah. That was the I can share my screen again. That was the logo of the 4 nations, which represent the different groups in the show that I was talking about. So you know, Zuko is part of the Fire Nation, and there were other characters that were each of the other ones. And then the Avatar, the guy that he was like looking for, was one who can control all of them. So yeah, I'm a total nerd if you can't tell. Yeah, cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, and please reach out if you need anything. And great to see all of you. And good luck with the rest of the program.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Max.
Thanks
Appreciate
so
it.
much, Will.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks.
All right, so we have completed a project week. We are headed into week 12. We are speeding along. We are what? We're almost right at that halfway mark, right? Believe it or not, it is crazy. So I want to do a review because last week I think we did a decent job of touching on self-assessment, kind of practicing where we're at, getting a little more better of a handle on APIs. How are we feeling going into React? This is kind of the tipping point, right? Where we've got basic concepts under our feet. And now we're moving on to now finding the more efficient ways of doing it, of layering in a little bit more complexity, right? Of taking the JavaScript knowledge that we have and learning how to actually use that JavaScript to create a project that other people can use on the internet and can create a server with, and more efficient ways of building user interfaces. So that's where we're headed. But how are we feeling where we're at? Right at that halfway mark, how are we feeling?
Nervous.
Nervous. All right. Give me an idea of what are we nervous about? What's going to be helpful? What would ease those nerves?
honestly, nothing is gonna ease the nerves except jumping into it. It's just the next. It's just the next level of what's piling on to what's next. So just I guess just pre-nerds. It's just the jitter of okay, what's next? It's things is just kind of flying and building. I think every week I just have that. I think imposter syndrome is definitely real. Every week I come in, I'm just like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like,
So I think it's I may still do this, but I wanted to share a de-identified or anonymous version of the self-assessment, right? Because I think it's so easy to go look at all of this piling on top of each other, and you just are saying, how am I doing in the program? And the answer is like, not well, I'm behind, right? And it's like, but it's a boot camp. If you aren't feeling the pressure of this program, we aren't doing a boot camp right? Like, you know, this is not a college course. This is not 2 college courses. This is a 4-year degree packed into 6 months. It is supposed to be nuts, right? But it is not to take that at just the face value, but to be able to go in there and look through that self-assessment and say, there are 25 concepts on this list. And if you had told me what a for loop is at the beginning of this program, I would have said for what, right? But being able to go in there and say, oh, that's a loop. I understand what the loop is doing. You know, all of that, being able to look at that and say, all right, maybe I'm not at mastery of this, but I get the general concept. I understand that it's looping over it. I may want to get a little bit more practice with it. But for the most part, if I got asked what a for loop was in a job interview, I could tell you it is a way for the computer to execute code over and over again, over a set number of times or over an array. Great, you've mastered a for loop enough for a boot camp, right? And so the results, not empirically, I haven't averaged everything out, but for the most part, there were very few things where people, I think there were only 1 or 2 answers out of all the questions where people were like, never heard of this, what's she talking about? For the most part, everyone was even to that level of, I mostly get this, I don't, you know, you were all, almost all the answers were to that point of saying, hey, I'm getting this concept, right? I haven't fully mastered it, but I'm on the right track. I'm getting there. And that is the most reassuring news for me, because all of that practice we had with loops, we're going to get more practice with it in React, right? And all those practices with variables, we're going to practice more with that in React. And all of those JavaScript syntax things, not only are you going to get that in React, it's going to come back in Node. All of those data structures with the objects and the arrays, that's all coming back in the database, right? So everything from this point forward is more about building up that practice and getting more experience and finding better ways of using all of those concepts. So yes, we are having more concepts coming down the pipeline with React and with Node and with the database, but all 3 of those are taking you from, believe it or not, you are a developer right now. You know enough to build a web page. You know enough to even build a little web app on the front end. Do you think at the beginning of this program, you would be able to say, I'm going to be able to build an artificial intelligence tic-tac-toe that I can play against? No, of course not. But you guys did it, right? And you're able to follow along with that code. So that is where we are continuing to progress, right? So React, just to give you context on everything, is a JavaScript framework. What other frameworks have we used? Maybe not in JavaScript in particular, but what other framework did we use?
Bootstrap.
Bootstrap was a CSS framework, right? And we think about what Bootstrap did for us. We could have built the page without Bootstrap, but because Bootstrap gave us the grid and gave us the buttons, that made it easier for us to build the page, because some other developer had done the hard work to make all the classes work and write out all the CSS. React is a JavaScript framework, right? And what they're saying is, okay, JavaScript is great. but there's a lot of lines of code that we had to write to take our data and get it to show up on the page. And we learned that with tic-tac-toe. We've got to loop over this and create all these divs and all these buttons and all of that stuff, right? And you've learned that with New York Times as well, right? All right, I understand I have to dig through all of that data or the weather API, but once I get all of that data, it's a pretty laborious process to take all of my HTML, move it into my JavaScript, and now I've got HTML cluttering up my JavaScript and dynamically updating the page. So there's got to be a more efficient way of marrying our JavaScript on our HTML, some way that we can almost write a template and surround it with our JavaScript, and all of a sudden our data is just going to show up there. So that's where we're headed to in React. Before I get too excited about all of that stuff, though, any other comments about how we're feeling, what we would like a little bit more practice with, anything in general?
I think, like you said, if I went to an interview, would I be able to explain? You know, if you give us an assignment, I know where to look. You know, I have pretty much kind of have an idea of what it's supposed to do and what it needs to do. But if somebody actually asks me in a question to explain, I think I need to practice that, you know, just kind of saying it out loud, making sure that my thoughts are in order. And, you know, because I can't be like, well, let me see what Max said. I can't pull it, you know. So
I think a great way to get that practice is use your inline comments, right? Read through the code and think about how I do it, right? Think about, all right, we just coded all of this out, but now that Max did it, before I move on to the next step, pause the video, and before I hear Max's explanation, let me try and explain this code myself, right? And holding yourself to, I want to write down what every line of code is doing here will make it so much easier, because when you look at a whole function, you're like, never would have known how to do that. But when you take a step back and you go, okay, I need a function because this is going to take a couple lines of code to do it. Okay, what's the first thing we've got to do in the function? We've got to get the element we're going to put our HTML in. All right, what's next? We have to start building our HTML. Our HTML is going to start out blank. Okay, what's next? Oh, we've got to loop over the data. Okay, now that we've looped over the data, we've got to generate the HTML. Now that we've got the HTML all added in, we've got to take that HTML in our JavaScript and put it back into our HTML and into our document object model, right? And when you break it down into those steps, now all of a sudden it's a lot easier to think like that engineer and say, all right, that block of code, I can't tell you what it's doing. I can't tell you how I would have done it. But if I go line by line and make sure I understand it, now all of a sudden that breaks down the barrier to explain it for someone else, because you took it line by line, right? So holding yourself accountable, going back into the code that we did and commenting it all out may be a more helpful exercise than even trying to keep up in class, right? Of saying, you know what, let me just watch Max. It's okay to not keep up, to not have the homework done at the end of class, right? It's okay to say, let me make sure these concepts are sinking in so that when I go do the homework, I've got a better launching off point. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the code seems like the hard part. I've got really bad news. The hard part is writing the comments, right? The hard part is making sure that you understand what each one of those lines is doing. Christy, you have your hand up.
My comment was along the same lines as what Shantina was saying. Yeah, just being able to read it and understand the different. I think for me, I found a cheat sheet that has like vocabulary, but just the vocabulary and understanding what different with like now you're saying JSON is a JavaScript framework. So
No.
No,
React is a JavaScript framework.
That's what I'm sorry. That's what I meant to say. So React is a JavaScript framework. So is React going to function like Bootstrap functions in CSS? So it's gonna already be a block of code that we would pull and we would use it for what we want to do.
Yes.
So that might help. That might help with the reading and the understanding. Because it's just like yesterday, yesterday Ryan did code. He did everything in HTML. So he did CSS in HTML. He did JavaScript in it. I don't know if you saw the video, but I was like, wait a minute. So just that part. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that throw you for a loop, because it's like you don't know that, you know what I'm saying? Like so you feel like you learn a little bit more, you know a little bit more, you understand a little bit more, and then it's like, oh God, now I'm lost again. So
And unfortunately, that is how a boot camp is supposed to go, right? Is as soon as you got your bearing and you feel like you're headed in the right direction again, that's when we, put the bag over your head. Or, it's a terrible metaphor, but there's no other way to say this other than you have to get your brain to think like the computer, right? Which is a really hard thing to say. So when you're in that for loop and you understand, okay, here's the syntax, right? And you look at that loop and you say, this loop is going to run 3 times, not the way you think about it. The way you think about it is computer starts off at 0. Is 0 less than whatever I'm trying to get to? Yes, it is. Go into this for loop, go run this line, then this line, then this line. Okay, we hit the ending curly brace. We come back up. We add one to I. Okay, now we go through. That is called tracing code, right? That is, you are trying to execute this code in your brain the same way the computer does step by step. And if you can get to that level, now all of a sudden there's a better level of understanding because you're doing things in the order that the computer is. And now it's easier to catch, oh, I said inner HTML, but I did lowercase TML. And that's why the JavaScript was trying to find my whole thing, couldn't find lowercase HTML anywhere. And that's why it's not working, right? So being able to trace it down to that level, I think is super important. So the framework of React is going to feel a little, I don't want to say dirty, but it's going to feel a little unnerving because we're going to take our JavaScript and we're going to have HTML right in our JavaScript. And it's going to kind of feel like inner HTML, but we're going to go through it. And there are 2 different ways of learning React. And React even puts this on their website. They say, hey, if you're someone who learns hands-on, if you're someone who needs to learn by doing and do it through a project, we've got a tutorial for you. But we also recognize that there is a different learning style of someone who needs to understand the concepts first. And once they get the concept and see the concept being used in a little code snippet, they're able to move on to the next concept. And if they chain all of those concepts together, they can build a project. And so that's the approach we're going to take, which is a little different than how we've done it before. We're going to make sure that we understand each one of these concepts. And once we learn that concept, we're going back to the daily outline and we're putting that definition into the terms list, right? We're saying, all right, this is how I understand it. And that's going to be my gauge check, because you guys are going to do the definition. And I'm just going to type it in, add it in, make sure we're all wrapping our heads around it. And then we're going to move on to the next concept, right? So we're going to spend today on concepts. We're probably going to spend Wednesday on concepts. Reminder that there is no class tomorrow, but there is Open Hack 6 o'clock at Common Space. And attendance is highly encouraged if you can make it. I will be there. I will be able to answer any questions that you may have. We can do like a one-on-one off to the side, but very important to socialize for all of the reasons Will presented. As someone who just went through the interview process and literally just hired a careers in code graduate from cohort 1, it is very important to communicate. It is very important to show that you're going to be a good fit for the team. And it's very important to show that you're always willing to learn, right? So take all of that and go into React. And I will say, Christy, you made some comment that triggered this, but there was a student in cohort 2 that felt like they were just getting dragged along, and they were like, I'm trying. I sometimes I feel like I'm getting my feet under me, and then we move on. And all of a sudden we hit React, and the light switch didn't just turn on. There was a nuclear reactor behind it. It was like everything clicked all at once, right? It was like, I understand the point of programming now. Like everything that they were not getting up until that point, React was like I don't want to say the gateway drug, but that was like what made it click, right? So we're gonna be diving into React, but anytime we hit a new concept or use a new term, throw not the speeding ticket this time, but throw out term. Just shout it out in chat or come off mute and say, that's a new term. We need to define that, right? And we're going to build up that term list over time so that as we go through these concepts, we're going to feel like we've got the foundation under us. So then we go into, oh, tic-tac-toe, that may be a good React app. Maybe we'll go back into that. And oh, we talked about chat a little bit. Maybe we should do a little bit in chat. And oh, that weather app, we used the API there. I wonder how the API is going to impact our interface and making it a little bit cleaner to understand. And oh, components, that would be nice if we could have one day as a component and then just reuse that component for all 5 days. So we're going to start layering into all of that and seeing how all of our past knowledge can be made more efficient by using the React framework. And then we're going to move into our node, which is, hey, using other people's data in our interface is great, but what if we want to use our own data and have that stored in a database? And before you know it, we're going to be presenting your capstones. So today was hopefully the past weekend was hopefully the day that you got caught up on assignments. Grading is now going to commence. And we're going to start using that. Hey, if you're 10 assignments behind, we're going to see a warning light come on. If you're 15 behind, that's probably going to trigger a discussion. If you're 20 behind, that's definitely going to have some discussions coming out of that to get you more resources to make sure you're staying on track and all of that good stuff. So all of that said, it's already 6:28. Do we have any other questions or comments before we dive into React?
Yes. Quick question.
Yes.
Max, remember you were saying something about like a week off. Is that still a possibility or no?
I'm going to say, let's see how we are feeling. The week of June 27th, which is not counting this week, 2 weeks ahead. We currently have that scheduled for a project week for React, but I am hoping that we are going to do so many React projects next week and towards the end of this week that you won't feel like you need a project week. So I would love to target the 27th for an entire week off, which would be not only that week, but also you would have 4th of July off, which is a Monday. And then we come back into database design and jump into that. So I'm going to say, let's see how we're feeling beginning of next week, or maybe on Tuesday of next week, see how we're feeling about React. And then we can decide at that point if we'll do a week off. Ideally, we would have that kind of planned in advance in before the cohort even kicked off. So instead of it being a 24-week program, it would be a 25-week program with a week off in the middle. But because we've already got dates set for graduation and the ceremony and all of that stuff, which will be on the 8th of September, we'll see if we can cut that entire project week off and do it as a complete week off, but I will keep you guys updated on that.
Did you say graduation is the 8th of September?
Yes, 9/8.
Okay, I want to put that on my calendar.
It is a Thursday. It is technically like the last day of class, but that will be in person at Lemoyne, of course, pending any COVID stuff that's going on at the time. But last cohort, we were fortunate to be able to have that in person just as the COVID wave was subsiding. So I believe we've got that all kind of keyed up at Lemoyne, but yeah, it's safe to pencil in the 8th at 5:30-ish for graduation.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. So let's dive in. This is, no, just this tab. Here is the outline for tonight, linked in Canvas and in the daily schedule. Two things to note here. If we pop open this React concepts link and the React tutorial link, these are really important to tell apart, right? So they've got this big orange box here that says this tutorial is for people who prefer to learn by doing. That is by on the React homepage, clicking on the tutorial page, that's what brings us here. However, there is also in the documentation, if we go into the main concepts and hello world, you'll see down here it says this guide is designed for people who prefer learning concepts step by step. Now, I went through this tutorial and I'm like, I've been a React developer for years and years and years. This tutorial makes no sense to me. And I am someone who identifies as a learner by doing. And I was like, I don't know what they're on. This makes no sense to me. However, every learning resource is different, right? So this is straight from the horse's mouth. This is coming from the developers of React, which is largely maintained by Facebook, right? Well, Meta now, but they were a developer at Facebook created React, and React was such a big hit that it is now used in one of probably the top 5 most popular JavaScript frameworks. So if you're going through the React concepts and you're like, I don't know what the React documentation people are on, I don't know what Max is on, this makes no sense to me, it may be more helpful for you to go through the tutorial than to go through the concepts. However, like I said, the concepts made more sense to me, right? These are, this is how I learned React, was going through this list and understanding what each one of those pieces did, then taking a break, being able to define those pieces before we move on to the next one. So we will be going through the docs and the main concepts over here, and these are going to be essentially my slides, right? This is going to be the source of truth. This is what I'm presenting off of. I was going to do slides for tonight, and I'm like, I'm literally going to be copying and pasting every sentence on this page. Why does it make sense to do slides, right? So we're going to be running off of that. With all of that said, we need to be able to use React code. We need the ability to be able to run it. And React, because it is a framework, needs to be installed and usable. Now, we can go through the concept of using a script tag and a link tag, just like we did for our Bootstrap. But because because React has its own syntax called JSX, we need to get the framework set up a little bit differently. So what we are going to do is I am going to go to terminal, and we're going to practice using the straight up terminal instead of using the terminal in VS Code. So we will get back to VS Code. We're using VS Code to write all of our code. But in order to get our project set up, we need to do some file management and get something called Create React App running. So what I'm going to do And this part, you're welcome to follow along with me. When we get into the concepts, I'm going to probably encourage you not follow along and just make sure the concepts are sinking in. But this part in particular, I would encourage you to follow along if you are someone who learns by doing so. So to open the terminal, I hit Command space, typed in terminal and hit enter. That brought me here, and I just hit Command plus to blow it up for you guys a little bit. Now, remember, whenever you're in the terminal, no matter where you are, you're always working out of a directory meaning a folder, right? So whenever you execute a command, you're executing that command based off of whatever folder or directory you're working out of. So in order to figure out where we are going to pwd, or print the working directory. And that's going to tell me, hey, I'm in users hack upstate. Now, in order to figure out what other folders are in this hack upstate folder, I would like to tell it to list out all of the folders in my working directory. So in order to do that, I am going to say ls, or list out those folders. Now they're telling me, hey, here are all of the folders inside your users hack upstate. And I know that because in Finder, I can go to my Macintosh HD and go to my users and go to hack upstate. And here are all of the folders that it is finding. So I'm going to cd one more time down to my desktop. And now when I ls, it's going to show me my C3 my code folder is there. So I'm going to cd one more time into my C3 my code. But if I type in C3 and hit tab, it should auto-complete for me and drop the rest of the folder name in there. So now I'm finally going to ls, and I'm going to get all of my week numbers back here. Okay, this is great, but we're in week 12. There is no week 12. Now, of course, I could go into Finder and make the folder, but we're trying to get a little bit more terminal practice here. And the reason that's important is because when we get to the back end, the only way we're going to be able to interact with our server is the terminal. So using this as kind of an excuse to dive into getting a little terminal practice is a good idea. So I want to get into a week 12 folder, but I only have up to week 11. So I'm going to mkdir, or make the directory, and I've got to tell it the name of the directory I'm creating. So I'm going to create week 12. From there, I'm going to cd into week 12. This just made the folder. This is what the equivalent is of double clicking on the folder. So now when I cd all the way down to that level, I can run a pwd, and what that's going to do is it's going to show me that I cd'd all the way down into the week 12 folder. Now with all of that, I need to practice my mkdir one more time. I'm going to make my day one, and I'm going to cd into my day one, so that when I pd out of everything, when I print the working directory, I have either navigated down all the way, or I have made my folder and then changed into it. So we're going to pause there and poll, and I'm going to leave this history up on my screen. Apparently I'm not, in case anyone has questions, right? So whenever you see this hack upstate at Max's MVP, MacBook Pro, that is another command that I have run. So cd desktop. Now cd desktop doesn't have any output, but when I ran the ls command, all of this is the output. And I know it's the end of the output because the next line says hack upstate Max's MacBook Pro again. So I'm just cding or making my directory all the way down.
Max, just be mindful that you're going to be missing a count, because even though I'm here, might not be able to actually do the poll.
That's fine. Thanks for the heads up.
Okay.
So we will shoot for 10 votes tonight instead of 11 or maybe 9. It's okay if you're not following along. Go ahead and vote in the poll anyway. But again, this is where we have to throw the ref's yellow flag, right? Whenever we hit a concept that you don't fully have your head around, throw the yellow flag, say, all right, Max, you keep on saying ls. What the hell is ls? Oh, it's list. We're listing out the files in that directory.
Yeah, Max, I have a question.
Yep.
All right, so I'm in the, and I'm glad you said that too, because I was one, I understood what LS was doing, but I'm like, what the heck does that stand for? Is list, but okay, so I'm in my, I opened my desktop folder and then I come across and I look at your code. It says the MK, I'm down, further down. Yeah, what is that? I see.
Make directory. In other words, make a new folder called week 12.
Okay.
And then once we make it, we have to open it. So that's why we make it and then we CD into it.
And what is CD?
Change directory or change our working directory into the folder we just created.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is kind of pachinkoing your way all the way down, right? We're changing our directory into the folder. We're seeing what's in the folder. We're changing it again. Oh, now we got to the point where we want to create a new folder. So we make that directory and then we change our directory into it. And then we needed to make another folder. And that's how we got all the way down. Zach, question, you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm having, for some reason, when I'm hitting change directory week 12, it's not letting me go into that folder.
So it does not like spaces. And that is going to be your problem, is that there's a space between week and 12. So in order to get it to take the space correctly, you're going to do CD week, not an underscore. You're going to do a forward slash, a backslash, no, a forward slash. It's a forward slash. So CD, no, I back that out. Sorry. CD space week. And then the forward slash, which is under the delete, the other one, under the delete key. I always mix those two up. Space. And now the number 12.
Okay, sweet. Thank you.
I'm going to look that up because I always screw it up. I'm pretty sure that's the.
What does LS stand for?
List.
List. Okay.
That is the backslash. Okay, so the backslash is the key underneath delete. And if you shift and hit that, you get that. No, if you just hit that key under delete, you're going to get that slash. And what that slash is doing is saying kind of escape it out, understand that I actually want there to be a space there, and then you can get into it from there.
Okay. So if I were to make a directory, it'd have to be day //1.
Yes.
Okay, because when I did it the first time, it made two separate folders. I don't know if you can see this. One says
Yep.
day and one says 1.
Yep. So
Is
if
there a way
you
to
want to
delete that?
practice deleting that, you can do an RM space -RF. A dash, not a slash. And that stands for recursive and folder, but I always remember it as remove folder and then, yep, the number 1 and enter. And that's going to delete the folder for you and then just repeat that for a day.
Sweet, thank you.
No problem. Christy, you're up.
Okay, let's see. Share. Am I sharing?
Yep. Okay, so it's saying you don't have a folder called C3 My Code. So what you need to do is run a PWD.
Oh, so if I use capital letters and I didn't use capital letters in here, does that make a difference?
Yes.
All right, so let's try this again. So CD.
Oh, you're not typing.
Oh, wait a second.
So before you do anything, run a PWD.
Okay.
That PWD is telling you that you're in users Christy Harlow week 12. So you don't want to be there, right? You want to be in your desktop in your my code folder. So
Right.
what you're going to do is you're going to run cd space ... enter. And now run a pwd and see what it did to your paths. It took you out of the week 12 folder and brought you up one directory level.
So the week, because I did actually create something week 12. Where is that? Because I need to go
In
back.
your user's home folder.
Okay, so I need to go back and delete that.
Or you can use the trick that Zach just did, and you can use rmrf
RM dash
space dash rf
RF.
space week 12. Capital W, no space. Okay, now that's gone. So now you can CD into your desktop.
See. Oh wait, that is
So actually, before you do that, delete that out and write ls. ls is listing everything in the current folder.
okay.
So desktop is one of your options there. So that's what you want to CD into your desktop.
So CD space desktop.
Yep. And you can use tab to autocomplete. You already have it in there. But now if you hit enter, now do your PWD or your LS to see where you currently are and what your options are. So now you made it. Yep, go ahead. Now you made it into your desktop folder. And so if you run ls, you're going to see the list of all of the files that are on your desktop.
Yay. Okay, so now I need to CD C3.
Now just hit tab
tab.
and it's going to autocomplete it for you.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm here. So now I do
Make dir week 12. MKDIR.
oh, that's right. Okay.
PWD, you got a Chantina print working directory. And remember, whenever we hear directory, think folder.
Write that down. Print. Okay, so I have it, right? I have a week 12 now.
Well, C, run ls.
LS. I see it. I see it. I see it. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. TY and YW are not commands, by the way. Zach, do you have another question, or is your hand still up from last time?
Yeah, I had another question. So what does PWD stand for again?
Print working directory,
Okay, and that just shows the file you're currently in.
the folder or directory you're currently in, yes.
And then when you do CD, do you have to jump? Can that only take you to a folder that's like in the folder you're currently in, or can it take you?
It can take you anywhere. So let me share my screen again. So you can, I can CD to the root of my computer, like go all the way up to Macintosh HD. And if I PWD, it's like you're at the top. And if I run ls, I can see my applications library system users. But I can also CD multiple folders down. So if I say, hey, CD into users, hack upstate, desktop, I can chain those with slashes. And now when I PWD, I'm going to be back into my desktop level. And you can do that in reverse. If I said, hey, go up 2 levels, I can go ... which is going to say take the existing spot and go up 1. And then with the slash and another ... is going to take me all the way back up to my users folder. Because it's going to take me from desktop to my username and from my username up to users.
Okay. And then just one more question. I managed to create a folder that has multiple spaces in it, just to see if I could. But
so you would do slash space slash space and then the next part.
Yeah. I did that successfully, but I tried to delete it and it's not working. It's saying RM illegal operation -E.
Go ahead and share your screen. The Shranje, depends what slash you're asking about. If it is the normal slash that you use to the left of your right shift key, that is saying like another folder level down. So every time that you're trying to go down through folders, that slash on the question mark key is basically saying move down multiple levels. So I could move from my user folder to my desktop to my code folder by just chaining those slashes together. If you're using the slash that is underneath the delete key, that is basically allowing you to put a space or some other character that is not normally allowed in the terminal into your terminal. So like you have to tell it, hey, when I say space, I don't actually want a space. The space is part of the file name that I'm using.
How do I just make a previous, what command is it just to make a previous move rather than like,
cd space ... enter.
well, I did that because I was in my week 12 folder and then it took me to c3.mycode. So that's just the folder.
It's going one folder up.
Okay.
So if you were in week 12 and you cd ... cd space ... enter, that's taking you up one level. So if you cd ... again, that's going to take you from my code back to your desktop.
No, actually, I was in my day one. I was in my week 12 day one, and it still just it hopped. It's cd. I did a cd ... and then it jumped me to c3 - my code.
So she tried to go
Check
back
in
out.
Finder. I bet you accidentally created your day one in your my code. I bet you created week 12, but then didn't cd into it.
No, it's in my, because I LS'd my week 12 to make sure that my day one was in there. And that's how I know that it was in there. And then that's when I cd ... and it took me to see.
Okay, hold on. Let me finish up with Zach and then I'll screen share with you. So Zach,
trying to-
you almost have it right. Take the command that you just ran and put the slash before the space, not after the space.
Sweet. Thank you.
You were on the right track. It was that first forward slash that was throwing it off because it was like forward slash before a J. What is that?
Yeah.
So that's, or I'm pretty sure that's the backslash because the forward slash is the normal one we use. So it's backslash is what is letting you do the space.
Yeah.
Shranje, I'll come to you next. And then Danielle, I see your hand up still. Sorry, I will get to you in a minute. So go ahead and share your screen, Shranje. Okay, so go ahead and LS. And okay, so those are all your week folders, right? So go ahead, cd into week 12. And enter and LS. And now you've got your day one. So cd back into your day one. Nope. No periods. We want to go down to day one. So cd into, yep. And now if you wanted to, if you pwd, it's going to show you that you're in my desktop, my code, week 12, day one. So if you wanted to move back up to week 12, you would cd space ... enter. You are muted.
But did I actually have to pwd to do that?
No, pwd is just telling you where you're at. It has no impact of where you actually are. It's just telling you where you are.
Okay.
So if you cd space ... enter, now you're back in week 12. And you can prove that by running pwd.
So it's better to do PWD than CD because I pretty
No, no,
much.
okay, hold on. CD is moving you around. PWD is printing out where you're at.
Okay, can you tell me what I did wrong before what you just showed me?
So you were in,
I actually just created the day one folder.
okay, so you CD'd into week 12. Then
Mhm.
you created the day one folder, then you listed it out and you made sure day one was created. And then
Mhm.
you CD'd ... but you, after you created day one, you never changed into day one.
Oh, so I should have CD day one before I CD ...
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do, but yes.
Kind of go back to the week or.
Well, because you only mkdir'd into day one and didn't change into it, after you ran this command, you were still in week 12. We see what we did here is we...
So why did it take me to the desktop then?
It
What-
didn't, it took you to, you were in week 12 after you ran this command. Then you CD'd ... and it took you up to my code. Because ever since you ran this command, you were always in week 12.
Oh, okay, I get it now. That's what I was wondering. Why did it take me to my code? But you said because I never changed directories into day one after I created it.
You got it.
Okay.
And that's a weird thing of, you're like, well, I just made it, why wouldn't it open it? But when you think about it in Finder, when you make a new folder, it doesn't automatically open it for you, right? You make the folder and then you double click on it.
Right, right.
So the CD is the equivalent of double clicking on it. The mkdir, even though you made it, you haven't moved into that new folder yet.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Danielle, you are up.
Okay, I'm having a similar issue.
Okay.
Did I share my screen yet or no?
No, or if you did, I accidentally stopped it.
Okay.
And Zach, do not apologize for those questions. All of these questions are how we're going to get understanding. If we're losing you guys in the terminal, there's no way we're going to get React projects created the right way. So this is the time to ask the question, make sure you get the concepts. Okay, so first things first, Danielle, we're going to run PWD because we want to know where we're currently at, all lowercase though. Okay, now we're in classwork. So we're going to run ls to see everything going on there. Now we do have week 12 here. The problem is, as Zach has found, the terminal does not like it when we have spaces. That's why as developers, we tend to not use spaces and we use camel case instead. However, because you have a space in your folder, when we, if you click in that terminal and type in CD, and we can type, sorry. You're gonna have to, when you run CD without anything after it, it takes you back up to your home folder. So we need to, if you run PWD, you're gonna see we're back in your user's home folder. So we're gonna do CD space desktop, capital D, enter. And then we're gonna CD into classwork. And then we're gonna PWD and make sure that we've made it all the way down there, which we did, good. So now we are going to CD space, and don't run it yet. You're gonna type in week with a capital W because we're matching week 12 up here. And then the problem is it has a space in it. So in order to tell it, hey, a space is coming, we're going to use the slash beneath the delete key. Now we're going to type our space and type in 1, 2. Now we made it down to week 12 and we can prove that because we can PWD. And that's going to show, hey, we made it into the classwork folder, but because this pesky space was in here, we had to use this slash so it knew, hey, this space is in the file name itself.
Okay, I need to write that down and take note of it because I sort of missed that with Zach, and that was literally my problem. Thank you so much.
So you will very rarely find any of my code in a name with a space, with a folder name with a space in it, right? When I'm organizing my documents and all of that stuff, that's fine. But when I'm coding, because spaces cause so many headaches, not only in the terminal, but in programming languages as well, we tend to either use underscores, dashes, or camel case to avoid that problem. Not that there's anything wrong with using the space, you just have to remember, hey, whenever I'm typing something in with a space before the space itself, I have to put that slash in the other direction. Scadia, did you have your name up? Your hand up? Oh my God, I am so tired. Words do not work at this point. Okay. It is 7:01. We are going to take a break. We are going to be back at 7:20, and we're going to get our React app set up. I will stick around for a minute in case anyone has a question during the break. Otherwise, see you at 7:20. Let's do a quick recap. What is NPM? What's it stand for? What do we use it for?
Node package.
Yes, Node Package Manager. And what's the command that we use the most for NPM? What do we use NPM for?
Install.
Install, right. So we're using Node Package Manager to install our packages, right? And packages are in the same realm of a framework or a library, right? They're this pre-written code that we can pull into our own code and use. But there became this problem of, well, what happens if I would like to run a command from an NPM package, but I don't want to install it myself? We would say, well, when would you want to do that? Well, whenever I create a React app, I would always like to create a React app with the latest version of React. I would like to be able to run this command and have this command do all of the React setup for me based off of the latest version of React without me having to install the program that does all of that setup. And that's when the npx command came out. It was basically allowing a node package to run and to do all of this stuff without actually having to install a copy of it. So whenever we see npx and a command following it, what we are doing is we are using a command that is set up to work with npm and npx without actually having to install that package. So what we're going to do is, first things first, I need to make sure that I'm in the right directory. And in order to do that, I'm going to cd all the way down the chain, right? So I'm going into my users folder, my hack upstate folder, my desktop, my code, C3, my code, and my week 12, my day 1. Okay, so I'm all the way down into my day 1 folder, right? I want to make sure that my working directory is always correct before I run any commands, because this command is about to create a whole bunch of files for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type npx, x, not m. The x is for execute, right? I'm going to use the node package executor to go run this command. And I am going to create a React app. And again, what npx is letting me do is use create React app without me having to install it. It's just going to do it all for me. It's going to create my React app, and then it's going to disappear. I don't need to install a version of create React app on my computer. I can just use the benefits of it. And then I'm going to name my app. So I'm going to call it I'm actually going to call it Playground, because all we're doing tonight is playing around with the concepts of React. We're not really going to make anything. We're just going to get exposed to what React is. So I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to say need to install the following packages. All it's doing is installing the package for this one execution of it. So whenever you see something in parentheses, it's saying the letter that you need to type in order to tell it, yes, I would like to move forward. So we're getting that Y there because it's saying, is it okay to go ahead and install this so I can execute the package? So I'm going to say yes and hit enter, type Y and hit enter. And it's going to say creating a new React app in Hack Upstate Desktop C3 My Code Week 12 Day 1 Playground. And this may take a minute depending on your internet connection. I've got a lightning fast internet connection and a lightning fast computer, and you can see we're only a fourth of the way done. So we're just going to give this a minute. Okay, so it created everything for me. It finished running it all. And then we got down here and it's telling me all of these commands, but they say, we suggest that you begin by typing CD playground. Well, why do we want to CD into the playground? Because if we ls, we can see it created a new folder for us called playground. So, okay, I'll play along and I'll CD into the playground. Now when I ls, there are a whole bunch of files in here and folders in here. That's okay. What we're going to do is run npm, m, not x, npm start. And what that's going to do is it's going to start up a server for me, just like we do a live server in VS Code. Well, React has a special server that runs that takes all of our React code in that special language in JSX and transpiles or compiles it into regular JavaScript that the browser can understand. So just like we start a live share in VS Code, we can't start a live share in VS Code for React code because we need React itself to be using a web server and taking that React code and making it work in the browser. So we are going to run npm start, and that's going to fire up the server for me. And I'll say, okay, it's fine for terminal to use Chrome. And that's going to open a new page for me that looks like that. So if we have gotten to this spinning atom logo and it says edit source app.js and save to reload, that's the point that we want to get to. So of course it cleared my history for me, but we did, and I'm going to put this in the live stream. We did npx create React app playground. Then we cd'd into the playground, and then we ran npm run start. Stephanie, go ahead.
Was there a step between npm start and then when it was installing it? Because once I did npm start, it just gave me, it didn't look like your screen. It was like a bunch of errors.
I put the steps in the live stream. If you did those 3 and are still missing something, go ahead and share your screen.
Let me see. Let me try this.
Oh, and we're going to stop here to poll.
Okay, no, I'm good. Thank you.
No problem. Doug, go ahead.
Is it because we were in the playground folder where the React files were installed that saying started up React?
Yes.
Okay, so if npm start somewhere else, it would do something else.
If we so if I'm in a new terminal and I like cd to my desktop folder and prove that I'm in my desktop and run npm run start, it's gonna be like, I didn't find a package.json here. I don't know what you're trying to get me to start. There's no such file called package.json, so I don't know what you're trying to start.
Oh, were we supposed to say npm run start? I just said npm start.
The run is optional, only for the start command, which is weird, but you can do npm run start or npm start. They're alias to the same thing. They do the same exact thing.
Okay.
So really what's happening, and if you can put on earmuffs here if this is going too in depth, but if I look at my week 12 day 1 playground, if I print out my package.json, in the script section, there are 4 things that are built into the create React app: start, build, test, and eject. And they're really just aliases for this package called React scripts: start, React scripts, build, test, and eject. So if you copied this line, React script start, that would do the same exact thing as saying npm run start or npm start. But it is very common, no matter what JavaScript framework you're using or anything in npm, for the scripts to be defined here, so that when you download any new project, you can run npm start and it will go into package.json, figure out how to start the project, and then start it up for you using that script.
Okay. And one more question. When you do npm install or npx, I've already forgotten what we did to tell it.
npx create React app.
Where do the packages live that npm is either installing or running?
Very loaded question.
Are they like out there on the cloud?
So if you run npm install without the -g flag, G stands for global, it will install in the node modules folder of whatever directory you ran npm install in. So if we ls, you can see there is a folder called node modules. So if we go into node modules and open that in Finder, you'll see these are all of the packages it takes for our React app to work. So if you run npm I in a project, it will install it into the node modules folder for that specific project. If you run npm I-G, that is saying you are installing it globally, at which point it installs it in node modules in your entire user folder, so that it's accessible globally on your user. When we run npx create React app, it has a temporary version that it installs to execute the command, and then it uninstalls itself. So that's the benefit of using npx, is that it does like a temporary install to execute the command and then goes back away.
Okay, I followed some of that. But the packages themselves that like, or I don't know if it's the installer or.
The installer, 95% of the time when you run npm install, it is installing it into node modules inside the project itself.
But where is it installing it from?
The cloud.
Okay, thank you. And
yeah,
so
it's downloading from the internet to have them installed.
And npm just knows where to go look for the different packages.
Correct. It is called a registry. In other words, it has the name registered with the file location. And that file location, when you type in the name, it knows, hey, go on npm, go contact, it's actually their API, go figure out where to download these files from and what the latest version is and all of that stuff. And then send your computer the download link to download them into the node modules folder.
Okay, thank you.
That was all under the hood, though. Do not worry if you're not at that level. But node modules and npm are very tightly linked. Excuse me. Christy, you've got a lot of motion going on there. Do you have a question? You're muted.
Yes, I'm over here dying. Okay, wait a minute. So let me see. Where am I? Where am I? Okay, so I'm all the way down to, should I just share?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm all, can you see my screen? So I'm
Yep.
all the way here. So I got here. So now I'm scared to
So you're not in day 1, you're still in week 12.
but see, I tried to make day 1 and it said file exists.
So now you need to CD into it because it exists.
Okay.
Click in there first.
Well, that was my first question. And then
Now you're in day 1. Now you're safe to.
so now I start with the NPX.
Yes.
Okay, jeez. All right. I was over here dying. I'm glad you saw my face.
No, the terminal won't let you create a folder with the same exact name because it's like, do you want to overwrite the existing folder? Or do you want to just, ignore it? And so that's why it throws an error when you make a directory that already exists. It's like, what do you want me to do with that?
So I got confused earlier. And so I just went into VS Code and made that folder because I was getting frustrated with the terminal. So then when you posted the code, I went back and I started and I went all the way down and did what you did. And then I got there and then I tried to make another day 1 and that's when I got stuck. But
Yes.
I'm here. I'm here now. That's why you saw all those faces because I was over here dying.
It's all good. There's benefit to having your camera on, right? I know when there's a sense of panic.
Oh, let's see.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to share my screen. Got almost everyone following along, which is good. Okay, so we've got our React thing, right? We're guessing this is React, but we need to dive in here. We need to see what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open VS Code. And no idea what I have. Oh, weather's still open. Okay, so file, open folder. And we're going to go all the way up to my code. We're going to go week 12. We're going to go day 1. And I'm not going to open day 1. I'm going to open the playground folder, right? Because the playground folder is what has our entire React app in it. The reason why we didn't put our React code just in day 1 was there may be a possibility of us working on multiple React projects, right? So the reason why I put it in day 1 was in case we end up working with multiple React projects. So I'm going to open up Playground itself. And sure, I'll save whatever changes I had. That was weird. Let me try that again. I'm going to open. Okay. Now I'm over here. We already know about that node modules folder. This folder is where all the code is that it takes React to work. We never, ever, ever want to modify any code in node modules ever. The reasoning behind that is if you modify some of that code and you think, oh, I fixed whatever the problem is, whenever those packages update, which they do frequently, they are going to automatically overwrite any code changes that you have made inside of this folder. So no matter how tempted you ever are to edit code in this folder, don't do it because whatever fix you made is probably going to get overridden. Okay, public folder. This folder is where all of the files are served from. In other words, this is where our index.html is. This is where our favicon is, or favicon, which is the little icon that shows up in the tab. This is where our robots.txt file is. Robots.txt is how Google knows how to handle our app and how to index it or crawl it. So public folder. We don't need to worry about much in here other than maybe the index.html. Not for today, though, just something to put in the back of your head. Next up, we have the SRC. Does anyone know what SRC stands for?
Source.
Source folder. Yep. This is where the source of all of our code is going to go, because we're going to write all of our code in here, the source code, which hopefully that's a term we've heard before, and that is going to get built into regular JavaScript code that it knows how, the browser knows how to execute. So 98% of the code we are going to be writing is going to be in this src folder.
I know, Vic, but the total packs are.
Okay, we're continuing on down here. Package-lock.json is a 28,000 line file. Package-lock.json is what gets generated by npm, so it knows what versions of packages is installed in node modules. You never, ever, ever want to be modifying package-lock.json. It is a file so that the computer knows how to tell other computers what is installed on your node modules. Package.json, you can modify this one, but oftentimes npm is going to do it for you. Whenever you npm install a package, which we will be doing a lot of, whenever you npm install something, it's going to be added to the dependencies. Package.json is the file that when you send your React app to another developer, whether you're working on a team or they want to review your code or they want to run your React code, package.json is going to tell them, hey, these are the things that need to be installed on your computer if you would like to run this project. So package.json is just setting you up so that if you ever have to reinstall your node modules or you ever send your project to someone else, the dependencies, in other words, what do we need for my code to work, and the other information in general about the project, like, hey, how do we start this project and what kind of browsers does it run on, is all in package.json.
All right.
Finally, we've got our readme.md. MD stands for Markdown, and this is generally a good practice for each one of your projects to give a human some context as to what this project does, how to start it, any install instructions, anything like that. So this README was generated by Create React App, and they're telling me what each one of these commands does, right? If we run npm start, it says it must be in the project directory. In other words, we have to change our working directory down into our project for it to run. So we're going to run npm start, and it's just telling me what it does. It runs the app in development mode, open localhost 3000 on our browser to view it. Well, if we go to our browser, we can see we are on localhost 3000, and that is where our React code is running.
Yeah, no, the source pack down there, she didn't see it,
so I am going to go into my files, and we can see some files over here in our source folder that we should be kind of not afraid of, right? If we open our app.css, all right, that's the CSS we know and love. There are no major changes there. It's straight up CSS. And we've got index.css. We've got a JS folder. That's fine. We've got logo.svg, and SVG is like a PNG or a JPEG, except it's a vector image. It's drawn with geometry and coordinates, so it's infinitely scalable. And we've got some other files in here that we don't need to worry about. But I am going to start in my index.js. Oh boy. All right, well, some of this syntax is kind of familiar. We've got a const and a variable. We haven't really been exposed yet to React DOM, but hey, document.getElementById, we know what that's doing. We've used getElementById before. And this render stuff is a little weird. This import stuff is a little weird, but hey, look, report web vitals. That looks like a function. So we're starting to get in here, and if we go and we go app, okay, I don't know what this syntax is yet. That's okay, we're gonna get there. But when I highlighted app, you notice up here, app got highlighted too. Okay, import app. Okay, well, I know what importing is, right? If I import some data into a system, it's gonna suck in the data in from there. From, okay, I just said from. Where is it sucking it from? Wait a second, that // looks familiar. It's almost like I made you guys suffer through the terminal to get more context into how React was working. Okay, well, the dot means the current directory that I'm in the source directory. Slash means go look in the folder, and then app. Well, here's app over here. So if I open that app, whoa, all right, now this is funky. You got a function app. We know functions. We don't really know this whole import thing or export thing, but God almighty, there's some HTML in my JavaScript file. Okay, it's a little weird, but I know maybe this source curly brace thing is a little funky, but you know, for the most part, this is some HTML, right? Okay, maybe this isn't so scary. What happens if we come into our HTML and I delete everything between the header tags and I just leave my div class name? Well, I'm going to save that file and whoa, all disappeared. Okay, white screen here, but because this is HTML, can I like do an H1 and do a hello world? Oh, it's my hello world. But wait a second, that's centered and that's a pretty font. Where's all that coming from? Well, we have an import up here for app.css. Okay, well, we figured out how we got to app.js. Let's look in our app.css. Oh, look, there's a bunch of stuff in here. So if I just come in here and clear all of that out, now I got my H1 over on the left. That means something in here must have text aligned me center. Oh, look, there's the text aligned center, but I don't want any of the styling. I'm going to clear all of that out, save the file so it's just an empty file, and I get my hello world. So let's take a poll and make sure everyone has hello world showing on the left side and is comfortable with app.js and is understanding maybe just this section of the code.
Max,
Mm-hmm.
are we going to be working off of this more?
No.
Okay, this is one of those moments where I was just watching to make sure that I, you know.
Nothing wrong with that.
Okay, all right, so then I'll answer the poll.
Trust me, no one is going to be proud of the React code that we produce tonight. I'm giving everyone a chance to follow along because some people, no matter how much they're understanding the concepts, it won't sink in unless they're practicing along with me, right? And so that's why I take the pause. Me, if I were in your shoes, if I were learning this for the first time, I'd have popcorn and a Pepsi with me and I'd be along for the ride. I'd just be watching, right? Maybe with a notebook, maybe jotting some things down so that after class, I could put that video in 2x and just blast through it and do it all. Nothing wrong with learning that way. That's the way I would learn. However, like I said, there are those people who just need 2 or 3 minutes in class and they can catch up and it clicks, and that's what gets them the light bulb moment. So I'm happy to respect both teaching styles or learning styles, I should say.
I just want to know where you put, I'm confused because I'm looking at, where did you put hello world?
App.js. I was in index.js, but I kind of just followed the string, right? Index, we know index is our starting place, but index had this thing called import app, and that was coming from app.js. So I pulled the string a little bit and I got into my app.js and I put my H1 in there, but it was centered. I went, well, centered, that's CSS. Oh, I'm importing my CSS. So let me go follow that string a little bit more and clear out my app.css file.
So you cleared that stuff out. So you're actually
My
in-
app.css is completely empty. My app.js, I deleted everything except this div tag and replaced it with the H1 hello world.
Oh, okay, because I was following along, but then I opened up VS Code and I'm like, I don't see this anywhere. Okay, that makes sense. I got it.
Right, because I didn't want a spinning React logo. I didn't want their background or their picture or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
Right, I wanted a blank slate. I wanted to just play around with React and get their stuff out the window.
So every time you open up React, or is it just because we opened up this page?
It's
Okay.
just because we started a whole new Create React app, right? Because we're starting with a brand new app, we just cleared out the stuff that they had in it, which is a very common thing to do. Is when you're starting a new app, you kind of like when you get a new computer or a new phone, you're like, I don't want this, I don't want this. It's just bloatware or that stuff they installed. Same thing for the React. It's like React comes with all this stuff and then, ooh, spinning logo, fancy. I don't want any of that, out the window.
So, okay, I noticed that you're using the term app.
Mm-hmm.
So every time we do something in this, we're creating an app.
Thinking over my answer carefully before I say yes. Yes, every React project is considered a new app.
Okay.
Bootstrap is a framework, a CSS framework for creating websites. But because React is, again, choosing my words very carefully here, because React specializes or excels at handling data, data is what is going to convert your website into a web app. Making your website interactive, being able to have users input data and you display that data in your application, that is what is turning your website, which is just, hey, here's an article, into a web app where someone could comment on it or could like that post or could upload their own article or their own bike route or their own, whatever it is, right? So when we think about data, it is so easy to go, oh, big swaths of data, right? Oh, weather data for the whole country and the forecast and all of that. But we can back it all the way down to what was our data in tic-tac-toe? It was a board. And it was literally, did an X play there? Did an O play there? Or did no one play there? Well, that's data. And we're going to be able to use that data in React to make our web pages just magically update. We're going to take the data and write our HTML in a certain way so that when we set that data into our React app, it's just going to do the right thing magically and update the HTML.
Magically?
Magically.
Okay. Okay.
And when Doug asks me how it works behind the scenes, I'm pointing him at a Facebook engineer because it is magic to me. Okay. We got 10 votes in for the poll. We're going to keep going here. Okay. Got excited. I wanted hands-on. We got hands-on. Now I promised concepts. Let's go back to concepts. So I'm actually going to close out of all of this. If you have the outline open, you can click on React concepts and get there the same way. But I will tell you, for the first year that I used React, I had that documentation open every single day because I could not, for the life of me, remember the syntax or remember any of it. So if you just do a search for React.js, it's the first link, reactjs.org. From reactjs.org, 2 different places you can go. If you are a hands-on learner, if you build out their intro project and you're like, I remember where to run that command, I remember doing it in the intro project, you are going to their tutorial and they've got all the steps listed out here. But again, this tutorial made absolutely no sense to me, and I've been working with React for almost 5 years. So instead, I'm going to their documentation, and would you look at this, we definitely got started, and we created a new React app. So we're already making progress here. We don't really care about the release channels that's saying, hey, if you want to use the beta version of React or an older version of React or a new version of React, you can go through the release channels. And there are a bunch of different ways we can use React. We created a new React app, but hypothetically, you can add React to an existing website, or you can pull in React from a CDN, which is how we pulled Bootstrap in. However, React is kind of its own beast because it uses this language called JSX, right? It's this hybrid between HTML and JavaScript. And because it uses its own language, it's a little finicky on getting it set up. It is possible to use React without JSX, but for a beginner, you don't even want to think about that. 99.9% of all React projects are using JSX. It is the syntax created by React. It is by far the most common way to use it. So all they're saying here is get started. There are some playgrounds and adding React to a website. And finally down here, it says the React documentation assumes some familiarity with programming in the JavaScript language. You don't have to be an expert, good, because guys aren't there yet. You're on the right track. But it's harder to learn both React and JavaScript at the same time. So we're reiterating what we've already told you of all of this is building. Yes, you're going to get more practice. The practice in React is going to help you understand your JavaScript. But they're saying we recommend this JavaScript overview to check your knowledge level. It will take you between 30 minutes and an hour, but you'll feel more confident learning React. This takes you to MDN. And I'm kind of mad that I didn't click on this link sooner, because if you look all the way down here, that kind of looks like our self-assessment, other than closures, which I don't really agree needs to be taught to a beginner JavaScript learner. But we kind of went through all of this, right? Control structures is going to be your if statements. You're controlling when your code is running, I hope. Yes. So this is another word for if. And custom objects are just like regular objects, except we defined a custom schema for it. So we're looking over all this and we're like, yeah, I am ready for React. I do know most of those concepts. Yeah, bring it on. All right, so we're going to go into the main concepts here, and we're going to click on Hello World. Okay. You know what? We saw this code somewhere, or we saw code somewhere like it. What it is doing is it's saying React knows to start in index.js. Index.js, just like index.html, special file name. So it knows, hey, I'm going to go to index, whatever it tells me to do in index, that's where I'm going to start with my React app. And what it's doing is it's using React DOM. Whenever we see this import up here, what it's doing is it's pulling in that package from NPM. What package did we use from NPM already? We used it in a calculator. Does anyone remember what the name of it was?
Prompts.
Prompts. Remember that prompts package that we used when it was like, what's your total bill amount? And we typed in a number in the terminal. And then I said, what's your tip amount? And we typed in another number and hit enter. That was an NPM package. React, just another NPM package. It happens to be this giant framework. But what React is doing here is it's saying, hey, go use this package called React DOM, and built into React DOM, DOM, by the way, our document object model, the same document object model that we use to get things out of our HTML or to put it back into the HTML. And it's create root, which is built into React. And it's saying document get element by ID root. Okay, let's take this part. We can say, all right, that's all React. That's React setting up, firing up for the first time. But this part is telling React where to attach. Where should I take this React code that I'm running and put it into the HTML for you? Well, document get element by ID, we know that one, and root. Okay, well, if we go into our public folder and look at our index.html, all right, this is feeling a little bit more familiar. We got our doc type, we got our title up here, we've got our body, and then, oh, there's a little div ID root here. So what our index.js is doing is it's using good old-fashioned JavaScript to send into React and say, hey, React, whatever you choose to run is going in to the root div. That is what that whole line of code is doing, is it saying, all right, we're setting up our React app to use the ID called root to put our React app inside of there. Okay, great. Now we need to tell root what to render, what to actually make show up in that div. So we say render, which means just take this code and literally run it, make it show up. You can ignore this React strict mode. And then what it's doing is it's saying app. Okay, now this syntax, little funky, but not really funky, right? Like we know divs have elements and that's how those tags work. And we've got, you know, span tags and style tags and script tags and all of that stuff. But this is a capital instead of a lowercase. She's okay, we're going to get into that in a second. But all of this is coming from our app file. And that is one advantage to React, is that we can import other files into different files, right? This is called modular code. We can import and export things and reuse that code over and over again. Okay, so we're getting all of that. That is pretty much, we're just going to stop there for a second. So we're going to come back and we're going to read this documentation. And the documentation is saying smallest React app, all we're doing is we're using the React package to create a root to create the place all of our code is going to go into. We use good old-fashioned JavaScript to go into our index.html file and pull out the one div that we want to put all of our React code into. And then we're telling it, hey, go render this H1, go render this app file, go take whatever React code I'm sending you and go make it show up in this root. Stopping there, any questions? Okay, everything else on this page is reiterating everything that we read under the installation. Hey, you got to know some JavaScript. This guide is designed for people who learn concepts step by step. That is how we're going to learn React, step by step. And all of the steps we're going to learn are over here. Not going to get through them all tonight, but we're going to go step by step and understand it. JSX is new syntax. JSX is weird because it's not just JavaScript, it's also HTML. So it's important to identify when we're getting confused on syntax, hey, is this HTML that I'm stuck on? Hey, is this JavaScript that I'm stuck on? Or hey, is this a JSX concept, meaning this is React syntax? So it's a little different, it's a little bit funkier. So if you guys have any questions when I'm typing out code, when you're trying to understand it, identifying what language we're using, JavaScript, HTML, or JSX, is going to be helpful in identifying why the syntax is the way it is. Okay, we're going to move on. Introducing JSX. I have said enough. So, const element. Okay, regular JavaScript. We're good, right? Well, whoa. H1, we can't put an H1 into element. There's no string around it. Well, that's where JSX is a little weird. JSX will recognize that this is a HTML element, and we can store HTML elements right in regular JavaScript variables. That is part of the power of React, is that we can take HTML, and now we don't have to put it in a string. We can just tell our JavaScript variable, hey, I'm sending some HTML your way. And what they're saying is the funny tag syntax is neither a string, it's not really HTML, but it's close to it. It's close to JSX. It's a syntax extension to JavaScript. In other words, it uses all of JavaScript syntax, but layers it on. We recommend you always use JSX. JSX is similar to a templating language. In other words, when we use those template literals, right? Remember when we had that light bulb moment of we can take a variable and put it right into the string using the backticks, using the $ curly braces? That is what JSX is like. And so they go on to explain why they built JSX, what it solves using components. And now we get into embedding expressions with JSX. So in our JavaScript, we could say, I'm in app.js, I'm playing around here. This is where you can stop following along with me if you would like to. This is not getting turned in for homework. We're just playing around. So if I say const my str equals max, what I could do is I can come down here and say, I would like my name to show up in a p tag. And I can use these special curly braces. Now we've seen this something similar with the $ curly braces, but the curly braces in JSX are saying, I want the value to show up whatever's in those curly braces, just like the template literal. So I can say my name is curly braces, my str. And when I save that and look at my React app, I see my name is Max. And if I come back here and I take out my str, if I take out the curly braces, now I get my name is my str. So what the curly braces are doing is telling React, hey, don't actually put the letters my str there. Go take my str, see what the value of that is, and put it in to my p tag. So I get my name is Max. Now I can do that, but whatever is inside of this is going to execute as JavaScript. So if I've got a const car, which has a make of Toyota and a model of RAV4, I can say, hey, it's going to be another p tag here, and I'm going to say my car is a car. Now I'm using my object, but I want to pull out my key. Well, this is straight up JavaScript, right? I could take this, put it in a normal JavaScript project, it would be fine. But what I'm using is my JSX down here to say my car is a car.make and a car.model. And I'm going to save that and come back over here, and I get my car is a Toyota RAV4. And I can even use functions. I can say const my func is going to return 1 + 1. Okay, this syntax straight out of JavaScript. And I can come down here and add yet another p tag and say, I would like my func to run here. Now, whatever is going to be returned from my func is going to show up instead of what's in those curly braces. So now I get 2. And I can use all my parameters. I can say adder is my function name. And now I'm going to add 2 numbers together, num1 and num2. All right, there's parameters, just like our normal JavaScript. We're doing fine. I say num1, I say num1 plus num2, and I get 12 showing up. Because again, anything inside these curly braces, it's saying, hold up, not sending you any HTML anymore. I'm telling you whatever is inside these curly braces is going to be JavaScript. So go run this JavaScript. Go up to adder. All right, adder, normal function, takes two parameters. We add those 2 parameters. We return it back. Well, where do we return it back to? We return it back to wherever we called the function for the first time. So this whole thing is going to now be 12. And we know that because if we go into the browser and take a look under the hood and inspect, look, we've got a p tag and it says 12. And where is that p tag? Oh, that's all in this div ID root. Well, how did it end up in the root? Because we use index.js to say, hey, our entire element, our entire React app is going to show up in that element ID root. And that element ID root is all the way back in index.html. So you go back to app.js. Okay. Let's take a pause here. Do we have any questions about this? How are we feeling so far? Just threw a lot your way.
Following along, so the curly braces almost seem like I know it's going to run JavaScript, but it almost seems like the literal template almost.
Very, very similar. I know this is a really tough one to teach because you're like, okay, I get it, but why? Like, why are we doing this different yet? And I promise that's coming. But the syntax is the important thing to recognize, right? So H1, that's the same. That's HTML. No different there. Okay, p tag, we're doing HTML, but hold up, we've got this $sign in here. I'm sorry, we've got this curly brace in here. This curly brace is not HTML, and it's running some JavaScript inside of it because it's getting this mystr, but it's not really JavaScript either. This is JSX. That's where it gets a little different. Those curly braces are what lets us put some JavaScript value right into our HTML. That JSX is React. Okay, so let's go back to the Duro documentation. So they're saying, hey, we can use a const and we can use those curly braces, and that's going to make hello and the person's name show up. And we can even run functions. This one is format name. We did adder here, right? So we can run functions inside of there. They are saying we can also do entire if statements as well. So we can say, if my car.make equals Toyota, return otherwise, we want all of this to show up here. So if I come over to my code, I get that. Why do I get that? Because the entire app is running. What do we know about returns? We know returns, as soon as it hits that, it is done running. So we come into our app, we set up some variables, we have this function, and we check an if statement. This if statement is true. So the only thing that is going to be returned into this component, returned into our app to show up in React, is this H1 tag. However, if this is not true, go down here and make all of this HTML show up. So right now, if we look at our HTML, our div ID root just has that H1. But if we come over here and we change our car make to Honda, now I get all of that HTML back. Because as soon as we hit a return, that code is done running. But because this if was not true, we came down to this return and ran it instead. So the output of whatever is returned from the function is the HTML that's going to show up in the browser. Okay, going back to introducing JSX. So, so they are saying, hey, what we can do here is we can make an entire element assigned to a variable. So if we want to say, let my link equal And now normally we would be using a string because our HTML goes into a string in JavaScript. But with JSX, we can say href equals google.com and say Google. Now I'm going to save this. I'm going to come back over. Where's my Google link? Look at this code, figure out why my link isn't showing up. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Is it because it's, oh, is it because it's part of the first return with the Toyota?
Nope, because we're seeing my name is Max, my car is a Honda, and 12.
Okay.
What's the question again, Max?
Why I said let my link and I did my whole Google thing here. Why do I not see a Google link in my page?
All right, go back to the code. Link return. And what is the name of the?
Does it stop running after the if?
Nope, because we could add something down here like console.log made it here. If I look in my console, I made it there.
Okay.
You need to have those squiggly things. But it seems like you didn't put it in. There's something that you didn't put in. I just don't know.
No, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Squiggly thing?
We need the squiggly things. Where do we need the squiggly things?
Maybe around the where you have the A or around the A.
Not quite.
I link eventually.
That's the, yeah, Larry, you got it. I have my link up here, but it's just like JavaScript. I said, let my link, and then I didn't use my link anywhere. It's kind of like a function. Okay, I declared that variable, but I didn't use that variable anywhere. So what I need to do is I need to tell it where in my HTML I would like that link to show up. Oh, I would like that link to show up down at the bottom of my div. So now when I come over here, I've got a link to Google.
Okay.
But if I did that without my curly braces, it thinks I'm typing some HTML in and shows my link up. So this is we got double JSX going on here. We've got JSX up here. JSX is letting us take this entire HTML and store it into a JavaScript variable. We normally would not be able to do that because we would need a string around it. But we can also use JSX down here, put it in those curly braces, and say, hey, whatever was equal up here is what I would like to show up down here. And so now I've got Google showing up here. Okay. We can even use JSX right inside of our elements. So if I say let another link string equal yahoo.com, now I can do an A tag down here, and when I do my href, I'm going to say my href is equal to my another link string and put in Yahoo. So now, because I've got these curly braces here, it's saying, oh, href is not going to equal another link string. It's going to equal yahoo.com. So when I save that, come back over, I see my Yahoo link. And if I click it, I go to Yahoo. But if I take a look of what the browser sees here, all it sees is ahref.yahoo.com. How does it know that? Because again, it's just assembling. And when it hits those curly braces, it says, stop, let me go get whatever that link, whatever that variable equals, and let me put it into the href. Okay.
It includes the quotations.
It does automatically for you, yes. Now, you may have noticed JavaScript JSX says class name instead of just the regular class. That is because there is a conflict of interest there. In HTML, a class is a CSS selector, right? It is how we hook in our CSS. But in JavaScript, a class is a different concept. So the class term was used in two different places, and it meant two different things. It had one definition in HTML and CSS and another one in JavaScript. So the way React solved that problem is they said, now whenever you write class in your HTML, when you're writing out your JSX, use class name instead. So that's just one minor difference, is that we use class name instead of class in our JSX. Okay, I don't think there's anything else on this page. So before we get into rendering elements, I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to encourage everyone to spend the next 10 minutes playing around with React. Try and get some of my sample code to work. Try and get some of your own code to work. If you run into any syntax problems, I'll be around for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to answer them. There's no homework for tonight. You don't have to play around with this or turn in anything that you're playing around with, but I would encourage everyone to take these 10 minutes. Never good to cover new concepts in the last 10 minutes, so we're going to stop here. I'm going to share this file in the live stream so we can get a little bit more familiar with our JSX. I will be around for the next 9 minutes. Reminder, open hack tomorrow, 6 p.m. common space. Be there, be square. Hopefully wear a mask, but I don't know that that's required anymore. I will see you there around 6 o'clock. I'll be around to answer any questions if you have them. If you are remote and cannot attend Open Hack but still have questions for me, excuse me, hit me up in Slack and I will jump in Zoom and do a one-on-one with you kind of ad hoc. But take a breath here. Spend the last 9 minutes playing around with Java, with JSX and React, and let me know if you have any questions. I'm stopping my screen share because I have shared this in the live stream channel at in Slack. Created anything that you're particularly proud of in your React, feel free to share as well.
I have a question. This might be jumping ahead, but so now I guess I want to know what happens to like our like the arrays and the booleans and the nulls and what happens to those now?
They stick around. Trust me, they do not go anywhere. So
are they going to take on a different form, or are they going to keep the same form?
Largely keep the same form. If we say const ARR equals 1, 2,
Mhm.
5, 9. I don't know why. When we come down and we try and put that into our React, it just dumps them out the way they are.
So we'll keep the, when we use the array at the top, we keep the square brackets, but then when we go down into React, we put the array into the the curly braces.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
And then we can even do something like obj. Well, we already have an object, right? We've got car. So if I take this and I try and put car down here, React, if we go to the console, it throws a fit and it says, here this. Objects are not valid as a React child. Found object within keys make model. If you meant to render a collection of children, which we didn't. So it does not like an object in our JSX code. It's like, I don't know how you want me to show that. But if we say, hey, go show car model, now all of a sudden we're not trying to show the entire object. We're just trying to show RAV4. So because of that, this won't throw a fit and it will show RAV4.
Why does it keep putting stuff on that same line? You need to break it?
Because they're not in independent divs.
Oh, okay.
So if I put it in a div, it's gonna move it down to the next line. Or p tags or whatever.
Okay. Okay.
We are going to find a better way to loop over arrays to make certain HTML elements show up for each item in that array, but that is getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Okay. Wednesday?
Most likely, definitely by Thursday.
Okay.
Now, I thought I would just teach you intro to React and then just set you free and see how well you did. And then Thursday, I just test you on it.
Are you not allowed to use style attributes on React elements?
Ooh, I have to check the documentation to see when we get to that.
Okay. I tried it and it didn't work. I don't know if I just did something wrong with the syntax or if it's just not allowed.
Interesting. They do not touch on that. So, very good question. It is allowed, but you have to use a different syntax in JSX, which affords you more flexibility. So just like we have class name, which I'm not sharing my screen. Just like we have class name, which is a little different, but it's still a string in JSX for kind of a complicated reason. Style takes an object. And so we're using object syntax now in our styling. So our color is going to be blue. And our text decoration is going to be underlined. Now, a couple things going on here. One, the curly braces say, hey, some JavaScript is coming your way. The outer ones say that. The inner ones say, hey, I'm going to send you an object. The object is going to have the CSS property on the left and the CSS value on the right. So the key of the object is the CSS property. The value of the object is the CSS value. So when you come over to your code, what did I do that on? My name is, it looks like a hyperlink. That was a bad selection. Red, underline fine. So the styling is applying there. What that also lets you do is say something like, hey, I want const name styling to equal this object. And then I can use my name styling down here and it will still apply. I can change
If
that.
you had another object defining other styles, can you apply them both to the style?
You can. You could say something like const p styling equals border 1 px solid red. And then you could say my style for this is going to come from my p styling and from my name styling. And now I'm going to get the red border and the text underlined. This is what's called a spread operator in JavaScript. It is a newer syntax, but we're getting way fancier there than we need to. The important thing is understanding, hey, when I'm using a inline style, I need to use an object instead of a string. And the syntax I'm going to use is camel cased instead of dash. And to be completely honest with you, I'm very surprised that that is not in one of the main concepts over here of differences between JSX and HTML. There are not many, but the style and class name are the two biggest differences that I can think of. I'm sure you're going to find a third one, though. Okay, it is 8:31. We've made it to the end of class. Any last minute questions before we go?
Well, when will the video be up, you think?
In standard definition by 9:30, by high definition, I don't know how long it normally takes to process, probably 11.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everybody.
Wait, are you asking me a question?
So over on the side, there's a number 2
Where,
on the
where are we looking?
side panel.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
This is Git telling you that we have changed 2 files in this project, and it will tell you we changed app.css and app.js.
It automatically goes to Git?
What, Christy?
It automatically goes to Git?
Create React app automatically initializes a Git repository for us. So yes, it does automatically set up Git.
Oh, okay.
It won't automatically set up a repository for you at github.com.
Right.
But locally, it's setting up your Git repo because it knows 99% of the people writing React code also want to commit it into Git. And they figure it doesn't hurt anyone to have the Git repo automatically set up for them. So that's why they do it.
Git seems like it's packed full of things.
Are you saying you don't get it?
No, I'm saying React. No, React seems like it's packed full of things.
Yes, it is. And we'll commit all those things to memory.
Hey, have a good night.
I won't push it.
Okay, please.
I'll see you guys. Have a good night.
Have a good night.